Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. Now, what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, we're going to have a go at this line and wash, but in pencil. Now, I'm not talking about the normal pencil drawings that we would use to do our traditional watercolours. I'm talking about a finished, final, fully fledged, too many F's, but a complete finished drawing with shading, light, dark, lots of graphite on it, and then just adding a little bit of colour at the end. So, come and join me and I'll explain exactly what I mean. Okay, so here's my sketchbook that I use mostly in my drawing classes, and here you can see a very light wash applied directly on top of the pencil drawing. And as long as you're not saturating the paper with very wet washes, it will go down perfectly well onto sketching or cartridge paper. Now, I would always recommend doing a proper watercolour on proper watercolour paper, but just adding a touch of colour onto a totally finished drawing can be very effective. Keeping the washes transparent means you can see all those lovely pencil lines through each glaze. Now, I find it incredibly relaxing as you've done all the hard work in your drawing. So all your light and dark tonal values are already there. It's a bit like using a colouring book. Now, the watercolour washes work surprisingly well on top of the areas where there's a lot of graphite from the pencil. Now, this is a finished drawing from this week's drawing class that I simply took out my sketchbook and added the colour. And of course, you can always add some extra definition with your pencil once the washes have dried. So I found this old pencil drawing I'd done a few years ago in my drawer when I was working out a composition for a finished painting. Luckily, I had done this on some watercolour paper, so I thought it would make a good subject to paint for this week's tutorial. Okay, so for today's materials, my paper is some Winsor & Newton Professional 300 pound, nice and thick, so won't need stretching. My colours today, Cerulean blue, Cobalt blue, some Cadmium Orange and Cadmium Yellow, but any bright yellow or orange will do, some Burnt Umber, PAYNE'S Grey, and some Winsor & Newton White Gouache. And my brushes today, just the one, my number 12 round. Off we go, and as always I'm wetting the sky with clean water. And the good thing with graphite from your pencil is you get very little smudging or bleeding. So in with a mix of Cobalt blue and Cerulean blue, some Cadmium Orange, with a little touch of Cadmium Yellow, and let them all blend and mix on the paper wet in wet. And here is some Cobalt blue. Now, there are far too many mixes to list each one, especially as I'm doing a lot of the mixing directly on the paper. Now, all my greens are a mix of Cadmium Yellow with Cobalt blue, but sometimes I'm using Cerulean blue to get the more turquoise to the greens. Here I'm using the end of my brush to score in some long grass details. Now I'm really holding my brush right at the end to enable these big broad strokes, dropping in and splatting in lots of mixes and letting them blend on the paper, including a few clean water blobs to force a few back runs. Now, see link above for a video on back runs and cauliflowers if you're interested. Okay, so here's a thought. I'm going to drop in some Liquitex acrylic ink, and this is burnt umber, and just see what happens. Whoa, a lovely spidery effect, suggesting some kind of thistles or something. Now this is an example of thinking on the go, as I'd not pre-planned to use this, but sometimes I just simply go with my instinct. Let's also try a few granules of table salt, just sprinkled into the foreground, but go sparingly, not great big clumps of it. Next, a little more splattering here with some burnt umber, and now with some cobalt blue, still all done wet in wet. Now I know some people say that splattering is a bit gimmicky and fashionable at the moment, but I do find it a great way of simply getting paint onto a wash without disturbing it with your brush, thus avoiding any uncomfortable brush strokes, especially when it's just beginning to dry. So now it's time to let this dry, so it's a perfect time for a short break, and would you believe it, some Stone Steps ale. No, me neither. Made this one up too. Okay, next I want to create the illusion of the light hitting the top of each step. So I'm painting in a watery cadmium orange, and here just some Payne's grey onto the walls and the shadow side to each step. And a touch more splattering. Now for the tree canopy, and this is a mix of cadmium yellow and cobalt blue, and I'm keeping my brush flat to the paper to pick up its texture to get this lovely dry brush effect. And here a quick spray with clean water just to keep things moving. And you can also see, because this is 300-pound paper, there's very little buckling, even when I'm using a lot of wet washes. Now with some burnt umber, I'm painting in the trunk, and you can see it goes down perfectly well directly on top of the pencil, even the areas where there's a lot of solid shadows. And a slightly warmer grey here, just building up the stronger contrast on the steps. Another instant decision. I thought I could create a bit of drama by having a strong shadow from the tree cast across the steps. So, a warm shadow on the top of the steps, and then a cool vertical shadow on the vertical shadow side of the steps. So when this is totally dried, I'm going back in with my pencil, and this is a 5B, just to bring out some of the lines stronger, as I really want this to have a strong line and wash feel about it. Even getting in some of the diagonal hatching can all help to give this a sketchy feel. Just a couple of things left, a touch of splattering to help give a stony feel to the steps and wall. And a little white gouache for a touch of magic sparkle. There we go, I'm even going to sign it in pencil. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. Just have a look through some old sketchbooks, some old pads, and see if you can find some finished drawings that just need that little touch of watercolour to bring them to life. Anyway, as always, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment. I promise I read every single one, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. So take care everyone, stay safe, bye for now.